Morgan Beall is the Florida State Section Director for the Mutual UFO Network. This tech-savvy UFO investigator serves the organization in a variety of capacities. Maureen and I will talk with Morgan about being a relatively young UFO investigator and about some of the current cases he's working on. We'll also talk about a UFO in Mexico that appeared to shoot into an active volcano, and we'll talk about the detection of methane on Mars and what that could mean in terms of life on the Red Planet. That and other space and UFO news right now on Spacing Out. Greetings everyone, and welcome to Spacing Out. I'm Jason McClellan.
And I'm Maureen Ellsbury. Thanks for joining us.
We'll be talking with Morgan Beall about UFO investigations in Florida later in the show.
But first, let's talk about what's in the news.
On Friday, October 26th, Mexican media company Televisa reported capturing video of a UFO entering Mexico's active volcano Popocatépetl. The incident reportedly occurred on Thursday, October 25th, and was recorded by a Televisa-owned camera that monitors the volcano.
The UFO in the video is a brightly illuminated cigar-shaped object that appears to shoot into the volcano at an incredible rate of speed. Many have likened the object's physical appearance to the recent UFO over Kentucky. Televisa asked Dr. Margarita Rosada Solis, a member of the International Astronomical Union and a researcher at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM, to review the video and provide her opinion of the strange object. She concluded that the object does not appear to be the result of re-entering material previously ejected from the volcano. Although the UFO could have been a meteorite, she points out that the camera captured no sound or explosion to indicate the meteorite impact. The absence of a typical fireball appearance and accompanying trail of gases and debris would also seem to rule out the meteorite possibility.
However, it is important to note that the true appearance of the object is likely different from what is shown in the video because it was captured by a time-lapse camera. And although the assumption made by Televisa and many others is that this object flew directly into the volcano, it's really impossible to determine if that's actually the case or if the object went behind the volcano. But then again, it's possible the object might not have been there at all.
The UFO has a very defined shadow on its right side, and pixel variations are noticeable around the object. These issues have led some to conclude that the object is either a computer-generated hoax or a simple glitch in the video. Dr. Margarita Rosada Solis suspects the visible object in the video she was shown was not in the original video.
Several witnesses observed an unidentified aerial object in the skies over southwestern Illinois on the night of Tuesday, October 23rd.
According to the Monroe County Independent, residents of Hecker, Illinois saw the bright UFO in the sky at approximately 7 p.m. KPLR News 11 reports that the strange object was seen in both Monroe County and St. Clair County. According to witnesses, the stationary object hovered in the sky and twinkled with red, green, blue, and orange light. Some have even said that the object was rotating.
And according to the local Fox affiliate, KTVI, witnesses also described the UFO as being larger than a planet, but it definitely was not the moon. Freeburg, Illinois resident Judy Rachel told KTVI that she and her husband observed the same UFO back in early October. To her, the object looked like the sun had shrunken down to the size of a soccer ball.
Monroe and St. Clair County deputies reportedly responded to the calls about the UFO, and they patrolled the area and established a viewing post in rural Paderborn, Illinois, from where they observed the mysterious object. The UFO appeared to gradually ascend after 8 p.m., followed by the appearance of a second similar object. The deputies resumed their normal patrols after assuming that the UFOs posed no danger.
The Monroe County Independent reports that nearby Scott Air Force Base was contacted about the UFOs, and the base claims it had no aircraft in that area. And although the appearance of a meteor shower and/or solar flare activity was possible that day, the descriptions provided by witnesses don't match that of meteorites or solar flares.
Curiosity, NASA's Mars Science Laboratory, has been busy exploring the red planet. The recent discovery of shiny particles in the Martian soil excited researchers, but another discovery by Curiosity could now steal the spotlight.
Curiosity's onboard sample analysis at Mars, or SAM instrument, recently detected the presence of methane gas on Mars. As Space.com explains, on one hand, methane can be geological in origin, but then there's the prospect that the gas is biotic, or caused by living organisms, meaning it could be the gaseous residue of long-extinct microbes or even the output of Martian organisms alive and well today.
Researchers are understandably enthusiastic about Curiosity's methane detection, but scientists discovered methane on the planet's atmosphere back in 2003. In that case, a research team opted for the geological explanation. Now, according to an article published by Science Daily in May 2012, researchers were able to show that methane escapes from a meteorite if it is irradiated with ultraviolet light from the Martian conditions. Therefore, the team concluded that the methane detected in the Martian atmosphere is a result of high-energy UV radiation, triggering the release of methane from meteorites.
Nancy Atkinson of Universe Today reported another possible explanation for methane on Mars in September 2012, dust devils. A team of researchers published a paper in the journal Geophysical Research Letters detailing their proposal that the discharges caused by electrification of dust devils and sandstorms ionize gaseous CO2 and water molecules, and their byproducts recombine to produce methane.
With methane having already been detected in the Martian atmosphere, Curiosity was expected to detect the gas on the planet's surface, but the variability of the methane Curiosity detected wasn't expected. The next step is to monitor the methane levels over time to track variation. Chris McKay, space scientist and Mars specialist at the NASA Ames Research Center, explains that if the methane levels remain constant, then this can be reconciled with normal processes and a meteoritic source of organics. But if it's highly variable, then all bets are off.
In the search for extraterrestrial life, scientists focus their search on life as we know it. And life as we know it requires water. But to better understand extreme conditions in which life might exist elsewhere in the universe, scientists are exploring an ancient lake beneath an Antarctic glacier.
A team comprised of British scientists and engineers plan to drill through nearly 2 miles of solid ice to reach the subglacial Lake Ellsworth to search for life forms in the water and clues to past climate in the lakebed sediments, according to the project's website.
CNN explains that scientists believe this lake, and others like it, could be home to microorganisms unknown to science, potentially holding secrets to the origins and limits of life on Earth. And by learning about these microorganisms, scientists could expand their understanding of the possible conditions for extraterrestrial life in locations such as the bodies of water thought to exist beneath the surfaces of icy moons on Saturn and Jupiter.
The team spent the past 16 years developing this project. Drilling is scheduled to begin in December 2012, at which time 100 hours of non-stop hot water drilling will take place. When the deep hole to Lake Ellsworth is complete, the team has only 24 hours to sample the lake before the hole refreezes. You can follow the progress of this project at ellsworth.org.uk.
On October 31st, Discovery News published an article by Ray Villard titled "Fatal Distraction: Can UFOs Cause Air Accidents?" This article was written in response to a piece published by U.S. News & World Report titled "UFO Sightings Pose Danger to Aviation."
The U.S. News & World Report article cites Leslie Kean, author of the New York Times bestseller UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record, and basically makes the point that UFO reports should be officially investigated because it's in the interest of the public's safety.
The Discovery News story, however, ridicules this notion, quoting the noted UFO debunker Robert Schaefer as saying, "The number of fatalities in airline accidents caused by UFOs equals the number of motorists killed in vehicle collisions with unicorns." Villard, the article's author, also asserts that there has never been a corroborated report of a truly exotic vehicle of obvious extraterrestrial construction, something more than a blob, a frisbee-looking thing, or other primitive geometric shape, ever being seen in broad daylight and up close.
The author then goes on to claim that the Phoenix Lights have been debunked as a hoax where flares were attached to a series of helium balloons, and witnesses' imaginations simply filled in the non-existent details to describe a monstrous flying delta-shaped vehicle.
Although the general consensus among researchers is that 95% of UFO sightings can eventually be explained, Villard thinks this percentage throws the phenomenon into the fantasy land of metaphysics and supernatural. He concludes his article with the snarky quip, "Despite over 60 years of UFO reports, they remain as irrelevant to modern science as Linus's illusory search for the Great Pumpkin." This article is the paragon of professional, well-researched, and unbiased journalism. And hopefully you're picking up my sarcasm. And Maureen, when I read this article, I was pretty frustrated. You know, we see this occasionally, fortunately we see it less and less, but there are these journalists who just throw out these huge generalizations, and you can tell a strong bias in their writing, and they just show they haven't done research, and it's really frustrating to read articles like this that a lot of people, frankly, are going to read.
Well, and he even says, to the best of my knowledge,
Sure.
there have been none of these reports. Well, he obviously didn't do very much research. There's tons of reports, and I can think of one, and maybe he's going to classify this as a geometric shape, but a great case that was in Leslie Kean's book is Captain Ray Brower from 2007, where he was flying a plane with multiple passengers. This object eventually was picked up on radar. It was also seen by another pilot. And all the passengers, he did not discuss it with them until they landed on the ground, and they all reported seeing the same thing. And it was this large, sort of cigar-shaped craft with this crazy dark band on it. I mean, it's a very interesting story. But there's so many cases like that, so many pilot cases that there are reports in daylight of these things.
Right, of defined structures, defined craft. And, you know, that's another frustrating thing. People who have completely made up their mind that, you know, there isn't a possibility that there are craft out there that aren't of this world, or craft that we don't know about. I don't know what corroboration they're looking for, because, you know, these people tend to discount very credible people too. I mean, we're talking police officers, military personnel, government officials, presidents of the United States. I mean, these are people who have seen these objects, given their reports. I don't know what more corroboration you want.
I think that if you look at this article, the way he worded it kind of smart in a few spots, because he says, no known to be definite 100% extraterrestrial craft in origin. It's like, well, yes, we don't have the 100% proof that that's what this unidentified object is, but we don't know.
Right.
And he's dispelling the idea that it could be something out of the norm and kind of ridiculing people for that. And it's a very biased article and completely non-factual.
Right,
in a lot
and his
of
description of the Phoenix Light seems to be uneducated. But the other thing with this 5%, you know, something with 5% being unidentified, pushing UFOs into fantasy land, give me a break. So let's look at this another way and say, all right, if 5% of Toyota Camrys sold blew up when people drove them, you think Toyota's just going to say, oh, 5% of our Camrys are blowing up? Don't need to bother with that, because it's not, it can't be real. It's only 5%. We don't need to bother with it. Are you kidding me? 5% is huge. I wouldn't care if it's 1%.
Right.
And that's the thing that's so frustrating. I mean, a lot of these people just really refuse to acknowledge there is something that has been documented so many times over so many decades of unidentified things flying through the air. We're not saying that they are definitely extraterrestrial. We just don't know what they are.
It's a losing battle trying to go
It is
against
a
these
losing
people.
battle, and it's frustrating though.
It is, but so, I mean, going on to other sightings and the reason why 95% can usually be explained, let's talk about this Illinois sighting here.
Okay.
Probably one of the most plausible explanation is that it could technically be a planet that people are zooming in on.
That's possible.
But not necessarily the case in this one. What's
Right.
your opinion?
Well, this one is interesting because so many people saw it, and people saw it as something out of the ordinary. You know, the next day people were coming into local stores and commenting, you know, did you see that thing in the sky last night? Police officers set up their view post to watch it, and they watched it for, you know, more than an hour, 2 hours, I think. And I think later police officers said that it was a satellite, but I don't know what they're basing that off of, and I find that hard to believe because satellites don't stay hovering in the air for 2 hours. I mean,
Stationary, yeah.
we see satellites all the time, and you know, the satellites, the International Space Station, those type of things might be in the air where you can see them for about 2 minutes, and they move across the sky and they're gone. This one is interesting because it's an object that was hovering in the sky for an hour. Then, you know, whether or not you want to believe witness testimony, they say the object ascended. It moved up. And then another one, a similar object, appeared next to it. So based on that description, it's interesting to me. It doesn't sound like a planet or a satellite.
The only reason I said that, and I guess the 8 p.m., the ascending, is it sounded to me like it was slowly, like if the Earth was turning and
that
the
is
position was
certainly a possibility.
But-
I don't know what people mean by ascending.
Right. But yeah, it's interesting, and there's some interesting pictures, all of them different colors, and
Yeah, and you know, again, planets, go out and take a photograph of a planet or a star or the International Space Station or a satellite, and you will see sort of a twinkling, and it looks like something's changing colors from red and blue and green. I mean, that's just what lights in the sky will do. So, and we don't know what kind of camera the object
thanks for
is.
bringing that up, because I have a feeling I'm going to get my head bit off for even suggesting it was a planet. But that's the only reason I said that
No,
that
and
is
I'm glad you
an
did.
explanation, because they can change colors like that with perspective.
Right.
But further on our home planet, this Antarctica mission that's happening here is 16 years, and they're finally going to drill here.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about drilling into ice and sampling potential microbes in lakes. And Antarctica's been crazy. They've been looking at that because here on Earth, that's one of our most extreme environments we can think of. So again, focusing on life as we know it, but I'm glad to see it moving forward, and hopefully we'll get out to the moons of Saturn and Jupiter eventually.
Europa drilling.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for that. No,
Yeah.
but I think this is kind of interesting because there is potential too. I mean, that's 2 feet of ice there that we could find
2 miles.
2 miles,
Yeah.
2 feet. Extraterrestrial life under the surface, you know,
Yeah.
from past millions, billions years ago.
Well, and I think on other planets, that's a really good possibility. You know, we talked about that before of subterranean life, and you know, some of these deep oceans, underground oceans, are a good place to look too, because again, there's the water. But you know, talking about deep in the surface, we had this volcano story, and I want to hear what you think about this UFO diving into the volcano in Mexico.
I'm very suspicious of this volcano UFO. I think the time-lapse video is all we have seen, and it's really hard to make out what the shape is actually. You can't tell whether it's going. I looked at it like 3 times to try and see if I could see if the object was coming before the smoke or behind the smoke. You can't really tell.
Right, and we haven't even really seen the real time-lapse video. We've seen the super slow-mo of the time-lapse video that Televisa broadcast.
So I'm very suspicious, and I want to see the original video before I say much else.
And for those of you, I mean, we've talked about time-lapse video on the show before, but just so you understand, this object is shooting down from the sky, and it's a time-lapse video. The camera isn't capturing, you know, the 30 frames a second or whatever, you know, a normal camera would capture. So it's capturing a frame here, a frame here. So you're going to get a blurred image, or, you know, the object is kind of blended together. You're not going to see the actual shape of whatever the object is flying into or behind the volcano. That's another thing. It's a huge assumption to say it's flying into the volcano, because the angle of this camera and the photo and video we see of this super slow-mo they put on the news is zoomed in to an extreme. So you have, you know, pixelation and other issues going on too. But the individual from the International Astronomical Union even pointed out when she examined the video that there are, you know, oddities with the pixels around it, and it very well could just be a glitch in the video or something from when Televisa transferred it over to do whatever analysis they did. We just don't know. So it's a big leap to say that, you know, it's a UFO diving into a volcano. It's possible, but people also ruling out a meteor, you know, that's still a possibility, a meteorite crashing, because it could have been behind the volcano and you wouldn't have heard an explosion or seen, because this object flying in, you don't see any disruption with the smoke either. And the speed at which this object is traveling, it would have had to, you know, disrupt at least smoke, you would think. But again, we have no idea what it is. We don't have access to the original video.
I'm not really sure why they haven't released that when it's, you know, causing a stir to put both the original video and this super slow-mo.
I'm not expecting much, but you know, we'll do our best, and if we can get our hands on that, we'll take a better look at it and let you guys know. But you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's, you know, impossible to make any sort of conclusion from that video. I'm not saying that it's a hoax or anything like that. There are indications that could suggest that there wasn't actually an object flying through the sky there. It's just something with the video. But, you know, there's a lot of assumption going on here. So those are the details, and you can decide what you want with that. But that is what is in the news this week, guys. It's now time for our interview with Morgan Beall.
As far as active, serious UFO investigators go, Morgan is considerably younger than the majority of his peers in the field. Considerably.
Morgan is extremely active with MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and he takes his various roles with the organization seriously. He's an interesting guy, and he's working on some intriguing UFO cases. So to hear all about it, let's jump into our interview with Morgan Beall. Well, Morgan, it's great to see you again. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Now, I think the last time that we saw you was back in 2011 at the MUFON Symposium in Irvine, California. And I guess a little bit's changed for you since then, right? You're now state director of MUFON in Florida?
Yeah, a lot of other titles too. But yeah, no, I move around. I do a lot of projects for MUFON. I still I'm an advisor for the director of investigations. I also, for a stint of time, was the assistant director of investigations for MUFON. I'm the state director of Florida. I'm also the project manager for the new website development for the new website for MUFON. I'm also the developer and helping with development of the new MUFON application for mobile devices. So I got, and a few other projects. So
Okay.
Got a few things on your plate. Wow.
yeah.
Busy guy, dang. Well, so one of the good things about the Florida MUFON chapter is you guys are really active in investigations, more so than a lot of other states. And I know you've been working on some really interesting investigations lately, and one I know you mentioned was the 1964 incident referred to as the Cape Spheres. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that was an odd one. In fact, that was a case that accidentally became a MUFON case. I was talking actually to the primary witness's son, who was a witness to a current UFO sighting on the East Coast. And it ended up being that, oh, hey, by the way, my father has a story as well. And so I asked him to go ahead and make a report to MUFON, and there we have it. The case was historic, which I don't mind. And 1964, he wasn't quite sure of the date or the month. He knows that it was warm enough to get in the water, which is a lot of the time here in Florida. So I think that might have been probably closer to probably November, December. It could have been anywhere around that time. But yeah, very interesting case. He was a retired Air Force, and he had witnessed this prior to being in the Air Force, or actually it was during, and he was out there with a girlfriend of his on the beach, which is an intercoastal beach just north of Cape Canaveral, and he was trying to pinpoint exactly what the beach is because so many things have changed. It's probably a development now, but and in fact, when I started doing research on that date, I found that there were a lot of other incidences that occurred in 1964 concerning a Delta IV rocket, I believe, and a few launches where people have claimed during that time, that summer and that winter and the year after, of evidently rockets being either chased or followed by unknown objects, UFOs. And it's actually been reported by other people it's on the internet and a few articles that have been written. So it's not just, and this guy was totally not privy to those incidences. And in fact, this case doesn't even sound like it because those people witnessed something from far away. These people on the beach during this time witnessed this event, really close. And so they got a really good view of this object, according to the witness. Now, of course, this is 1964, and he's the only one that's come forward. But I'm sure there's other people out there that witnessed this event, and it would be very interesting to see how many other people know about it. But yeah, the event involved this large sphere-like object, chrome, kind of like a chrome. He kind of, I guess, compared it to like a ball bearing, and it had rings around it. It had like a gyroscopic type rings around it, one horizontal, the other one vertical, and those are the only things kind of moving. And well, as far as he could tell, the sphere was completely still.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if other people come forward from the beach scene and verify that. So what other sort of cases are you guys working on now? Is there any sort of current cases of interest?
Last year was kind of a big year for us. This year it's been a little slow. We have a lot of explainable cases, and what I mean by that is like, Chinese lanterns, things that are pretty obvious, and even some of the witnesses were saying, well, I'm not sure if it was a Chinese lantern or maybe a UFO. So we had a lot of those this year. But last year, we had a case, or in 2011, that came forward with a sphere that landed in a yard. In fact, it was on Chasing UFOs. They covered that case not necessarily very accurately, but they kind of took two events and smashed them into one event and then said that this one UFO that was described that happened to them earlier actually was the one that caused the marks in the ground, when in fact it wasn't. It was the one, and very confusing. But there was actually two cases, and I sent you guys that report, and it's open to the public. And the The trace evidence was basically burnt grass. Nothing unusual in the soil. And what he described was a sphere that actually came out of the, that actually was already in his backyard. His dogs were reacting as he let them out when he got home from work. And the dogs made a beeline for the fence, and all of a sudden this chrome sphere, slightly larger than a basketball, picks up above the fence and takes off and goes straight up, and then makes a 90-degree turn to the south. And that was his most recent report. But then as I was talking to him, he had more to tell. And he says, well, I know this is going to sound weird, and I hope this doesn't sound like I'm making up a bunch of stuff. But, and then he lays it on me about this red object. And this red object, he actually was able to get pictures of, or his wife was actually able to get pictures of. And that is also shown in the TV show. But that event didn't leave marks. I mean, it was suspected that it may have left marks in the grass, but it was way late for us to make that observation. This happened, several months or a couple of months prior to the one we investigated as a STAR team deployment. So it was very difficult to get any evidence with that, but they did have the photos, and the photos are very interesting. It was of a red object that kind of looks like a top, kind of a football shape, but on upright. We had another case up near the I-4 corridor that involved a possible abductee, and it was around almost the same week period or the same month. It was really close, of this large triangle that was over top of a gated community. This lady was actually coming to work, and she worked at the clubhouse, I believe at the time. It may have been a sales office, and she had witnessed a triangle. She didn't think much of it because it was still dark out. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning around that time when the sun is just, hasn't come up yet. And so she sees these lights and she's not thinking much of it. And as she gets closer, she notices she's underneath it. And so she gets out the peer out and look out. And she doesn't remember anything after that. She finds herself in her car with her hands on the steering wheel. So, and there is a little bit of a count of missing time. And our investigators who were deployed on that case found radiation levels that were slightly higher than normal background. And they were still low, but the background was low enough that they could differentiate the levels that were slightly higher on the car where she had opened the door, and on her leg, actually. And on the leg that was actually outside the car when she came to, or when she was noticing that she was still there in a strange state. So they were able to determine that there may have been some sort of exposure, possibly, and not enough to determine exactly, but enough to say that something affected the background levels enough to make it different in that specific area. And it just happened to be a very strange coincidence that the background levels around their door and around the door that was open, and her left leg that was outside the door, was actually higher than the rest of the other background. So,
wow. I'm sure you get a lot of interesting cases there, and I know Florida has its, a good number of sightings reported every year. And, I read a lot about, Chinese lanterns. You mentioned Chinese lanterns, and those turn up a lot in Florida. And did I see something about Chinese lanterns that you put on the MUFON Florida YouTube channel?
Yeah, actually, I did a little research, and I was like, man, I've got to get to the bottom of this. I mean, we get so many of these cases, and I just walked into a fireworks store, and I'm like, what's your best seller? Oh, you won't believe this. He takes me over to this thing, and he's like, these things sell like hotcakes. And I'm like, you mean sky lanterns? He said, yeah, no, sky lanterns. Everybody's buying them. I can't keep them on the shelf. And I'm like, oh, that figures. So that day, I bought a few and launched them. Somewhat unsuccessfully. I almost caught the field on fire, so be very safe. But I noticed around us, this was 4th of July, me and a buddy were out there in my favorite sky watching location, and there, lo and behold, the whole neighborhood was floating up with these Chinese lanterns everywhere. and they started coming up at where I live. I noticed I was like looking over there. I was looking over by the airport on the other side. There's a neighborhood, and sure enough, people were launching these things. And it's good to know what these things look like and their characteristics, because you'll be able to, like, I remember listening to one of your previous shows about the idea of being able to discern between that and a real UFO.
I'm glad to hear that you did actually test them out, because you're right, it is important for us to understand what our knowns look like in the sky so we can identify the unknowns. And Maureen and I have tested out the sky lanterns before, and don't feel bad, we almost caught somebody's house on fire. But they do look pretty interesting in the sky and do behave, in very different ways depending on the weather conditions and the fuel cells, if they go out and come back on, just like you said. So it's interesting. But, another interesting thing I want to point out is I am glad to see that MUFON Florida is utilizing technology, utilizing internet media like YouTube. You don't see too many MUFON chapters doing that. And I think I had to give you credit for that, and I will point out, I've never asked your age, but
he is young.
It's I think safe to say that you are significantly younger than a lot of the people in this field, and as involved as you are. Doing so much and trying to use technology and bring UFO investigation and research into the 21st century.
Yeah, it's a big thing in MUFON now. There's a big push to get the young involved, and there's a lot of young scientists and people like myself that have a true interest in this phenomenon. And a lot of what we're doing now in MUFON is going to be changing a lot of how people perceive not only MUFON but the field itself. We've now reconstructed what's called the SRB, which is the Science Review Board for MUFON, full of people ranging from masters, PhDs, people that have been field investigators for a long time that we never really tapped into. And now they're getting together and putting their heads together to come up with new programs and reports and that sort of thing. And it kind of ties into the new website, because the new website is going to be our new avenue to share with the public our knowledge, our reports, our written, we have a ton of articles and opinion pieces written by these scientists that we have no means to really get out. We have a journal, and we have, like magazines like Open Minds, but some of these articles are so long that you couldn't really squish it into 5 or 6 pages.
You've done a lot in a short amount of time in MUFON, and again, like you mentioned earlier, you helped create, or you did, the iConnect app.
Oh yes, the UFO Connect app, yes.
Right. And so people can go download that, and that gives them access to a lot of different sort of UFO news.
Well, what we do, it has it has 3 modules in it now. We've actually modified it since we first talked about it, because the app world is new and it's very difficult, and so coding these things is kind of it's kind of a frontier, and we're learning a lot of things that haven't been really thought about in programming. And, of course, we're going to fumble on ourselves a few times, and we did, and I'd be honest about that. The programming is very difficult, but now we've made it so that it works really smoothly, and actually 2.0, I guess the second version of the app is actually coming out in a couple of weeks. And you can go to ufoconnect.com, and you can find out about it, or MUFON.com. We even have a Facebook, too. We're going to be making those announcements soon, but you'll be able to download it on iTunes, and eventually, if we get the program off the ground, we'll get some more help to get it on Android devices as well. And it essentially acts like, you've heard of Amber Alert, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought of this idea a long time ago, and I was actually contemplating, and I even wrote down a plan of how much it would cost to use the Amber Alert system for MUFON to be able to get people more connected with the phenomenon. And I found out that it costs millions of dollars, and you have to work through Cisco systems. So then the advent of the smartphone came out, and then the iPhones started coming out. And then it was like, wow, I can cut out all these middlemen and do the same thing. And now it's definitely possible. The way that the Skywatch Alert works on the app is what it's called. It allows people to make reports, live reports, where they'll be instantly allowed to either take a video or a photo of what they're seeing, write a description, all the information is there, and they'll be able to send it live, and then anybody who has their settings on specifically for all of the world or wherever they want, they'll be able to get an instant alarm. that tells them that there's something in your area, or you'll be able to look at the map and see how close it is to you to be able to go out and see it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'll look forward to the Android version because I'm a Droid girl.
Yeah.
And for people in Florida, where can people go to find out about MUFON Florida and what's going on with MUFON Florida?
Yeah. We have a pretty good site, and we're going to start updating it some more soon. And it's MUFON.org. I'm sorry, FloridaMUFON.org. And there you can go, and you can actually look at our event sections where we have our local meetups. We actually use Meetup.com, which is a really great service to organize our meetings and to let people know where and how to get there, and it's free. Anybody can join Meetup, and they can join onto our Meetup. But they're actually listed there on the website under the events section. And we try to use everything we can in social media to make it as much and easy as possible for people to find where and how and who. And part of that is using Meetup. So you can go to our website at FloridaMUFON.org. I'm getting all these websites messed up because I'm working on so many of them. FloridaMUFON.org, and you'll be able to find everything about us here in Florida. And if you have any questions, you can actually email me directly if you want. My email's open. It's all over the internet, but it's morgan.fl.mufon@gmail.com. And I'll be open to any questions about the UFO Connect app, or if people want to get involved and that sort of thing. That's what we're looking for.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate everything you've been doing and look forward to all the new stuff that you'll have brought into the organization in the future. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun, and I'll probably be seeing you guys around at the next big event. So
you probably will. All right, thanks, Morgan. Good luck with everything.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Yep. Well, that is all for this episode of Spacing Out. Be sure to visit openminds.tv for all the latest news.
And then join us again next week when we'll talk with our friend Karen Dolan about exploring a possible connection between extraterrestrial life and ghosts. I'm Maureen Ellsbury.
And I'm Jason McClellan. We'll see you in the future.